Savage, and I'm a farmer at the Ruth Bennett Community Farm, and I'm an operator of the Kubota GR 2120 riding tractor, lawnmower, and I'm here today with Shane LaBrake, who's an instructor and a whole lot of other stuff that's good. We're here to teach me some stuff about maintenance and taking care of this valuable equipment like I should do. Now, with that, I'll give you Shane.
Thank you, Malik. It's really great to be here and see what's happening at the farm. I've been here a few times and it keeps improving every time, and it's good to see you again. So I'm really happy. We've got this machine to work on today. We're going to do the full maintenance on it. It's about at 100 hours and it's 1 year old, so we're going to go through and do all of the basic maintenance issues. And before we start, I like to make sure that we have everything that we need on hand to do the work, because the last thing you want to figure out is you're halfway through the project and you're like, uh-oh, we're missing something. So we already have right here laid out in front of us on this table, we have spare parts that we're going to need for the job. We have engine oil filter and engine oil. We're going to be using that to change the oil and oil filter. We have a transmission fluid filter. Technically it's a hydraulic transmission fluid filter and the fluid. We have extra belts if we need them. It's good to have extra belts on hand. We have an extra fan belt if that should ever go. We have extra deck belts for the mower deck. This is an air filter. We have a collection of fuel filters, which is good because there's 2 fuel filters in the fuel system. So we'll be pulling these out and using 2 of these today. We have extra blades if we need them, and we have extra pins and for anything we need to do with the mower deck. So we have basically everything we need in the way of parts and filters and fluid, so we can check that box off. That's great. And then we've got tools and other necessary things, grease guns, an air compressor, and we've also got some stuff for personal protection. So we have, if we need it, hearing protection, we have dust masks, we have gloves, and basically for whatever we're doing, we're all set up for the work. So that's the first thing, and perhaps the most important thing is this right here. I'm going to hold this up for our viewers out there on YouTube and the rest of the world. This is the manual for this machine. Okay, this is both an operator and a maintenance manual. And anybody who's ever taken a class with me knows that I have this little acronym I use all the time, RTFM. Yeah, read the effing manual. So this is really important. This has everything in it that we need to know to do the maintenance work. It's got the specs for the fluid capacities. It's got other information that's just really important. So we could try and do this without this, but this is really useful. It's our guide. It's not the best literature in the world, but it's the only thing we've got for this machine that tells us what we need to do and to do it right. So I think we've got everything accounted for that we need to do the job. So let's get started.
Now, Shane, I want to know, like, what do I do to get started with preparing myself for the maintenance of the vehicle?
Good question, Malik. So I would say the first things we need to do here is make sure we have access to the machine that we're going to be working on. So what we're going to do first is we're going to move these front end weights off the tractor. They come off really easily. We're going to get those out of our way. And then we're going to go and off film or off camera, we're going to take that deck off. So that's out of our way. And also just want to make sure that all the way around the machine, there's nothing that you're going to trip over when you are working on it, because we're going to be getting underneath it and working around it. We don't want to trip and fall. That's actually a major source of injury when people are doing maintenance, is they trip and stumble on things. So that allows us to open up the hood, and in a minute we'll take the deck off and then we'll get started.
Now, Shane, why is it so important that I continue to do maintenance on this vehicle?
Well, good question, Malik. So what we have here is a 3-cylinder diesel engine. It's an internal combustion engine. And it's important to understand what is happening. There's literally explosions happening inside this engine every minute, hundreds, indeed thousands of them. So we have to think of a few things. This engine requires fuel, air, and compression. It's a diesel engine. Gasoline engines use spark as well, but there's no spark on a diesel. It's pure compression of the fuel-air mixture that allows you to get combustion. So we have to account for the fuel system, which we'll talk about at a different point. We have to talk about the air coming in. We need good clean fuel and we need good clean air for good combustion. And then for compression, there's only a couple of things we can do as users if we take care of these things that are going to help us maintain really good compression over time. And what those two things are is keeping the engine well lubricated so that all those internal moving metal parts move smoothly without friction. So we have to account for lubrication and we have to account for cooling. Because if an engine runs too hot, you can damage the engine. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at lubrication by changing the engine oil and oil filter. We're going to talk about how to keep the engine running cool. So those two things deal with maintaining good compression. And then we're going to account for good clean air with the air filtration system and good clean fuel. We'll talk about that too. So that's what we're going to be doing today on the engine.
Yeah. Now, Shane, what do I need to do about the air filter and the breathing and stuff?
Well, that's important. So here is our air filter here in this canister, and the air intake is over here. So air is being drawn in to the air filter here, and this little piece needs to be replaced. This is called a dust evacuator, and it somehow got damaged. This is an easy thing to replace, but simply to check your air filter, this just lifts up. You can see that readily lifts up, so you can open this up. And we open it up, and this is the actual filter. Now this doesn't look really bad. It's dark from diesel exhaust or the diesel combustion process. And one way you can clean this regularly is just take this filter and tap it on your wheel and see if any dust comes off. So there's not a lot of dust coming out. It doesn't look real dusty, but we are going to go ahead and replace this today because we have a new one. The other thing you can do is with your air compressor and a blowgun, if we come over here, you can use this blowgun on an air compressor. Now, this is set high because we just filled it, but if it were around 25 PSI, that's a safe amount. And you can take your blowgun and go from the inside out. And I'm just going to do this. Since we're replacing this, I don't mind that I'm using high PSI. I'll do it facing this way away from us because some dust may come out. See the dust coming out there? So the filter is doing its job. So periodically with my air compressor and my blowgun, this is called a blowgun, I just clean out my air filter. Now again, you want to do this at low PSI on the tank, because if you're at real high PSI, you can actually perforate this paper and let dust into the engine, and that could actually seriously damage your engine. So you do this at low pounds per square inch, something like 20 to 25, not at 80 to 100, okay? Just very simple, always go from the inside blowing out. But
how would you adjust that?
Well, usually what I do is I'm using this to clean all my machinery off, and I let it go down. You know, it's set to fill to 80 PSI, and when it gets high, I use that to blow all the dust off my mower deck and other things.
Yeah.
And then when it gets down, I do this last when it's down around 20 PSI. And we'll do that in a little bit. So we're going to clean that deck off. So what we're going to do, we have a new air filter right here. We could also just quickly, with the blowgun, make sure this is all clean and watch yourself that you don't get dust on you. See that? A little bit of dust comes out. So we get that. And I gotta grab a little something here. So you can go ahead and open this up. Now this says Kawasaki on it, which is interesting, but it matches perfectly with our Kubota filter, so we know it's the right filter. And what we're gonna do is, what's today's date? May 27? I think we're gonna write on here.
Yeah, 27.
5/27/2020.
2021.
Whoops. I'm in another year still. 2021. And we have 92 hours on the tractor. So somewhere on here I'd like to write 92. So that tells you the date that we're doing this work, and then it has 92 hours on it. So the next time we go to do it, we'll know that. All you got to do is stick it in there, and you'll see that this fits over the air intake inside there. Make sure it's good and snug.
What's in there?
And then pay attention to where this clips on.
Yeah, see the arrows?
This arrow matches up to that arrow.
Okay.
And then this just locks down into that, just push it down in.
Oh yeah.
Simply like that. And that's all there is to it.
Okay, Shane, I need to know a little bit more about the cooling system, about overheating and stuff.
Yeah.
Can you tell me some more about that?
Yeah, that's really important too. So this engine actually has a liquid cooling system. So on smaller machines like this, you could have an air-cooled system or a liquid-cooled system. This is liquid-cooled, so it uses coolant just like we have in our automobiles. So this is your radiator here, and the coolant is passed through here, and it literally is cooled down when it comes out of the engine hot. So it comes out of the engine hot, it goes through the radiator. This fan here is drawing cool air from, we say cool, relatively speaking, ambient air against this screen, and as the liquid passes down through the radiator, it's cooled off, it's cooled down, and then it enters the engine down at the very bottom of the radiator. There's a hose, it's hard to see it, but there's a hose down here that goes into the motor, and then there's a pump that circulates the cooled off coolant into the motor to dissipate the heat from the motor, and then it's pumped back up into the radiator where it trickles down again and it cools off. So it's a big loop. It comes out hot, goes down the radiator, cools down, goes in cool, and it cools the engine that way. Now, what's important though are two things. You need to check the coolant level regularly, and here is a coolant reservoir or overflow tank, and you'll see that it's got a full level and a low level somewhere on there. I can't see it where I am, but there's probably, maybe over here even, a high and a low mark.
Yeah, right here, H.
So you are actually above the high mark, but you're fine. You've got plenty of coolant in here, and if in fact you had overflow, it's meant to go out this hose. Okay, so you're actually okay. You've got plenty of coolant. Make sure this goes back where it came from. You want to be sure that this doesn't go anywhere where it's going to get damaged. So you have good coolant. By the way, if you were to ever open the radiator to check, this, if it's hot, is under pressure. So never open this up when the engine's still really hot. Yeah. So if you shut your engine off, and you need to check this for whatever reason, let it cool down, okay? Because this is under pressure, and if you open this up, it's gonna spray out at you hot coolant.
Yeah, it says never open one hot.
Yeah, there's a reason it says that, right? So the next thing to pay attention to, there's two lines of defense for keeping the radiator from getting clogged. Because this is a mowing tractor, and every time you mow, you're making a lot of dust. And that dust, because we have a fan here that's sucking air in, that can suck in a lot of dust and clog the radiator. So we have two lines of defense. The first is this screen right here, that's right here. And you can remove this screen with this little bolt here. These just twist off on both sides, and you can remove this screen if you need to and keep that clean. So you got yours off over there. So this is something to do periodically. So this needs to be kept clean. This isn't bad right now. And that comes on and off very easily. Just don't lose these, obviously. And then this is the more important one. This is right in front of the radiator. And this is meant to be pulled out. And when you do, you can see we've got some caked on material here. Now imagine if this whole screen got filled up with this stuff. Even if you have enough coolant to cool down the engine, if this screen gets totally clogged with this kind of material, it can't cool the engine.
Right.
You will still overheat. So
Right.
you need to keep this clean. And again, we're wearing air mask now because this is going to make a lot of dust. So I'm going to put on my air mask. My dust mask. And what we do with our air compressor and our blowgun, I'll go over here with this, is we're going to blow this out. So you want to get this as clean as you can so that there's no dust or any other material that's going to clog your radiator fins and compromise the cooling. Now the other thing you can see, I don't know if our camera person can show this, but there is a lot of dust down in here that managed to get past this screen. So we're going to take a minute to clean that out.
Whoa.
So we've got a clean screen now, and we've cleaned out the radiator, we've cleaned out all this spot. So this goes in, just slide it down in there, make sure this is here at the top, and then we can put this screen back on.
Yep. Now, Shane, a whole lot of dust and grass came out of that just now. What should I be doing to avoid this, or what should I be thinking about now?
I think that's a really good thing to be aware of, is that when you mow, you're going to get a lot of grass going up against this screen. So what I like to do is whenever I finish using my tractor, at the end of the day, I'm going to do a few things. So before the work is done, I always do this. I'm going to fire up my air compressor, and using my blowgun, I'm going to take this and I'm going to blow everything around the engine compartment clean. I'm just going to use this blowgun and I'm going to go around and get all that dust off. I'm going to clean my radiator screen. I'm going to check my air filter, make sure that's clean. I'm going to blow off my mower deck. So I'm going to do this stuff every time I mow. And then another really important thing is your fuel tank is back here. And right now I can see it, so maybe 3/4 full. So here's your fuel tank fill port, and it's showing we're at about 3/4 full. One thing you want to do is at the end of every workday, top this up with fuel. This is really important, especially with a diesel engine, because when you leave the tank partially full, you now have air in the remainder of the tank. And in air, there is always moisture. And as this sits between the next time you use it, that moisture is going to condensate onto the side of the tank in the open air space, and then it's going to precipitate down into the fuel. In other words, you're literally going to get droplets of water that are going to get into the fuel system. And we want to avoid that. That's going to compromise your fuel. So one of the really important things to do at the end of every workday is fill this up with fuel. So here's the way I like to think about it. Years and years and years ago, when farmers used draft animals, you mentioned mules earlier, or oxen, or draft horses, at the end of every day, all year round, they had to feed those animals. They had to give them water. They had to exercise them. So the way I like to put this is, think of this as caring for your draft animal.
Yeah.
At the end of every workday, you got to give it more fuel. You got to clean it off. You just make this part of the routine, right? It's just a routine that you do every day. So the other thing I want to just say about that is you need to make a budget, like a time budget. And part of your time budget isn't just for doing the mowing, it's for doing all this work at the end of the mowing. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go over to Ruth Bennett Community Farm today and I'm going to mow from 1 to 4 and I got to be out of there at 4 o'clock, and you don't give yourself 15 minutes to do this, you didn't finish the job.
Right.
You need to say, I got to be done at 4:15 because I need 15 minutes to do all this service.
Now, Shane, that's what we do at the end of the day. What do we do at the beginning of the day? This is starting out.
Well, that's really important to pay attention to some things. So I should have said at the end of the day too, when I'm still using my blowgun, one of the things I'm going to clean, make sure is clean, is this right here. Have you opened this up before, Malik?
No.
This is where we check our hydraulic transmission fluid. And
Wow.
you need this to be clean because you do not want to get any contaminants into the hydraulic transmission fluid. So at the beginning of the day, when the engine is cold, you haven't started the engine yet, right? Engine's cold. This is your hydraulic transmission fluid. Oh yeah, this has never been opened.
Yeah, never.
So there's
Wow.
a dipstick. And what we want to make sure is that the fluid level is full. And this is really clear liquid, so it's hard to see. And by blotting it on the rag, I can tell that I'm between the 2 points. So you have a low and a high. And you need to at least be between these points. You can't be less than the low. And if you are, this is what this is.
Knowing me, it's probably low.
This is the Kubota recommended fuel. So we just stick this back in, pull it up, do another read, and this is almost full.
Okay.
So you're okay with this. So in addition to checking your hydraulic transmission fluid at the beginning of the day, always check your engine oil. And ideally, when you were cleaning the tractor off last night, you cleaned around the dipstick here. And I'm just gonna pull that out and whoa, we are low on oil. That's interesting. So I always take 2 reads. And this is definitely low. It's a good thing we're changing this today because this needs to be between the low mark and the high mark.
Okay.
And we're at the low mark, which is kind of weird. So we're definitely gonna pay attention to that. You should check this every day. So if you hadn't done this today and you kept running this, you could have started running on low engine oil. And the other thing you should check in the morning is make sure your coolant level is good. Always make sure that's good. And you can see right there, it's well above the high mark, so you're good. And then every once in a while, you should check your tire air pressure.
Okay, Shane, I learned about the cooling system. Now, what can we do now to change the oil, get the oil changed?
Yeah, it's really important to keep the oil changed regularly. Your manual will tell you every certain number of hours or once a year. You know, even if you don't run the motor that many hours in a year, change it once a year. And first thing you do is you warm up the engine to get the oil moving and get the sludge up off the bottom of the oil pan. And we're going to drain the oil. We're going to put a new filter on, make sure the plug goes back in that we took out, and then we're going to fill it with new oil. That's it in a nutshell. We'll do a few specifics. So we're going to let it run for about
Warm the engine up.
yeah, 3 or 4 minutes. We do this so we get good airflow, makes it easier for the oil to drain. Just don't forget where you put it. And then why don't you go ahead and pull the dipstick out too, Malik? That'll also help. And here you can just use this rag. Oh, you got it? Okay, so we bust that free. Go ahead. Now Malik, be careful. There's going to be a gasket there we don't want to lose. We should be wearing nitrile gloves.
Yeah, it's right on the. I like getting the grease on my hand.
Yeah.
Shows me I did some work today. Oh shit.
See now what he did?
Yeah.
He just turned this upside down.
And I could have lost that washer.
You got it. That's what people do. What we want to make sure is that there's a gasket that is between the top of the plug, or the piece of the plug that meets the oil pan, There, this is the gasket right there, and oftentimes these are, well, I got it loose so you can see, and this has a rubber, get this off, this actually has like a rubber ring on the inside of it, so it snugs down there really nice. Point is, don't lose this when you're changing your oil, and I like to have a spare on hand just in case I do, because what Malik did, this is what everybody does. When they undo this with their thumb and finger, as soon as the oil starts coming out, they go like this. And if that gasket's loose, it's going down in the oil. And if this were a 5-gallon bucket, you're never gonna find it. Yeah. In fact, if you didn't know it was supposed to be there in the first place, you're never gonna find it because you don't know to look for it.
Yep.
So that's the thing. Just make sure you get that gasket. So we let this drain. And you know, Malik, while we're right here, let's look at a few grease points because we're down here waiting for the last of the oil to drain out. We have 3 grease fittings we have to get right here. And what I like to do on my Swiss Army knife that Malik keeps pointing out is I use the reamer to poke right in the center of this is a little bearing, like a little ball bearing. And sometimes if those are rusted up, you cannot get grease in them. So I just take this and I push it to make sure that this is moving. And I see a little grease popped out of there, which is a good sign. Now I can take this grease gun, since this is one of our grease points and I'm right down here anyway, I can get this onto the nipple. And now we should have pumped this up a little bit first because it's a new, okay, now I'm hearing grease. What you want to see or hear is a little grease seal break where you're pushing the old grease out. Hear the cracking? It should start to come out. You should start seeing something.
Yeah, see, no.
Yeah, there it is.
On the other side, yeah.
Yep, so we got grease in there. Always clean this off. And then we have one other spot up in the very center. So we're mainly drained out. I'm just gonna blot out the excess. Now the thing here, you want to be really careful that you don't cross the threads when you put this with the plug back in.
Yeah, I'm listening.
So you kind of find the sweet spot where it starts to just go in nicely. And before I seal it down, there's still a little bit of oil there. See how that's going in nice?
Yeah, I understand. Don't strip that bolt because then it'll be dripping out.
That's right. And then we just want to snug it down.
See, it goes on so beautifully when that daggone panning in the way.
So I just try and get it.
It just looks like a space is there. Oh no, it's not.
Yep. You know, I'm just feeling how tight it is and saying that's good. It's good and snug. I'm using an oil filter wrench to break the seal on the old filter so that we can spin it off. And you should anticipate some oil coming out. So we have our oil pan underneath.
Yep.
And I can start to spin this. And are we seeing, yeah, there's some oil coming out. So be ready down there.
Yes, it's going right in the pan.
And then I just spin this off. It's worth saying we should have taken a few minutes to put on nitrile gloves, which we did not do. And that's the old oil filter. And one thing we want to make sure of is that the old rubber gasket came off, and indeed it's right there. There's a rubber gasket. So you just let that drain out. And we need to blot up all the oil that came out with the the old filter. And what we're gonna do is we have a new filter and we've put the hours that are on the engine and today's date on the filter with a Sharpie. And I'm gonna take just a little bit of oil and make a bead of oil around that gasket so we get a tighter seal. All you need is just a tiny little bit. And you just kind of go around, and that just gives it a better seal. Rag and just wipe clean the mounting surface of the filter. Like so. There's a little bit dripping at the bottom, but we'll catch that in a minute. And then the new filter goes on. And again, make sure you're not cross-threading.
Yep.
If you're lucky, like I was, it just spins right on. So last thing is just, these are hand tightened, so just snug it down with your hand as tight as you can feel it go. And that's good. It's good and snug. It's not going anywhere. So that's good and snug, and our drain plug is snug, and we're ready to add oil. And this takes 3 quarts of oil. And we're using 15W40, which is one of the recommended. And we have a funnel right there. I would probably free pour this. One thing many people don't realize, make sure that's clean, is when you pour from a core oil container, this is how you pour. It makes a difference.
Yeah, instead of going bloop, 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 bloop.
That's right. Don't forget, notice it says oil. And we took out the dipstick too, so we want to make sure that goes back in. So we have changed the air filter, cleaned the radiator screen, change the oil on the oil filter. What do you think we should do at this point? All good. Today what we're going to do is change 2 fuel filters and adjust the fan belt on this Kubota GR2120 diesel motor mowing tractor. And we learned from previous experience that even though this is in theory a very simple job, the access to these, particularly in the rear, is very difficult. So we've made some arrangements so we can get to it more simply, and we should be able to get the job done pretty quickly. So with that, the first step we have to do is actually get the rear wheel off. And by having the rear wheel off on the left side of the tractor, that's going to make it a whole lot easier for us to get the fuel filter off and the new one on. And we're using a 19mm socket to remove the lug nuts on the wheel. So what we're going to do first is loosen the lug nuts, just as you would when you're changing a tire on a car, and just make sure that's set up to loosen, Malik.
Loosen,
We're loosening
right,
or tighten.
righty tighty, lefty loosen.
So we're going to break those free just a little bit, each one. And then when that's done, we're going to jack up the whole machine on the rear side, so the tire's off the machine and out of the way, and then we'll be set to go. This machine has 2 fuel filters, and the one that we're going to change first is right here. And by having the tire, the wheel assembly out of the way, we now have a lot easier access. This is really simple. All we have to do is remove 2 clamps and loosen this holder, and then remove the old one and insert the new one. And so in theory, it's a very simple job. The challenge on this machine for this particular filter has been the access. And then the second one, if we move up to the front of the machine, is right here, and this is much easier to get to. So these are what we're gonna replace. Right now I'm removing the outer clamp, and once that's out of the way, I can then remove the two hose clamps holding the hose onto the filter.
This is the new fuel filter that we're replacing. And it's Kubota. I just learned that the fuel pump is right there too. So in case I have to do that and Shane's not here, I'll know how to do that the next time.
The direction of the fuel filter, it's really important that it follows what's on there. So in this case, it's really easy to see the rim of this cap. This rim right here is to the front, and that's the direction we want to go. Sometimes fuel filters will have an arrow. There is an arrow. It's hard to see in the film perhaps, but there is an arrow pointing the direction that the fuel needs to flow. So we need to keep it oriented, and what I'm going to do is just smear a little grease on this. Actually, Malik, your hands don't have a glove on, so I'm going to ask you to just smear a little grease on that nipple. This will make the hose go on easier. Just don't clog the hole. And then kind of go down along the wall of that. Yeah, like that. Excellent. That's exactly. And then we got to get that out of there. Yeah, so I have this here.
There you go.
I'll use that. It'll probably just dissolve. But
Yeah, it'll dissolve. No fuel in there, that's not good.
And then same on the other side. And this is just to make it easier for these to go into the hose. We want everything ready because when the fuel starts coming out, we don't want to be wasting too much of it and having it go everywhere. Okay, now we are ready. So Malik, I'd like you to kind of hold that there. Thank you. So now we can get this off, and I'd like to wait. To pull it backwards, so fuel is going to move as I start to get this off. See, it's got to be tight to do the job that it does. There we're getting it a little bit. Just got to free it up because it's been sitting there for a while. So the rubber is kind of
heated on, welded.
Starting to get something. The fuel's coming through this primary hose that I'm now disconnecting. And so this you have ready to get onto there. Easier said than done. Okay, see how I just pushed it using the pliers, and now I can go to the first hose and just, can you see this? I'm gonna just try and get that to go into there. And there it is. Woo! And now we just need to put this clamp back on, which holds the fuel filter. So we've got the wheel back on. All we got to do is lower it to the ground and tighten it. And if you look inside, you can see the fuel filter. The new one is installed. The clamps are facing out. Everything's where it's supposed to be. So all we have to do now is replace the front one, bleed the system, and we should be good to go. Okay, now that we've got the rear filter off, which admittedly is more difficult, the front filter should be a lot simpler. It's right here. Simply have to remove this. There's two clamps, one up here, there's one below, which again is in a bad position, but once this is off, it'll be easier to get that. So we're just gonna go ahead and take this clamp off that's holding the filter to the frame, then remove this clamp, and the other clamp and just swap them out and put it all back together. Because of the access, this should be a whole lot easier.
You put lubricant on that one already?
I already got it, yep. I was just trying to keep this. Okay, we got it off. We're ready to put the new one on. It goes in and goes in. And all we have to do now is put the clamps back and we should be done. And you can see that took a whole lot less time and effort than the first round. So sometimes after changing fuel filters, you have to bleed the fuel system because you just let air into the fuel lines. And on every tractor it's different, and I don't have an actual manual description on how to do this, but I've done it before, and so I'm pretty much sure this is a bleeder valve because it makes sense. It's in line with the fuel line right there, and this is a 10 millimeter. And all I'm going to do is open this up just a little with a little cup underneath it to catch any fuel that comes out. I can get that under there. And what I want to see are just some air bubbles come through the line. Okay.
Now I guess I'm learning now about putting in the transmission filter.
That's right. This is what's called the hydraulic transmission fluid filter.
And I'll put a little oil on the filter.
Yep, and this is hydraulic transmission fluid. So it's not motor oil. You don't want to mix that up.
I'm learning, y'all. I'm learning.
And this is the old filter here. And we're going to take this off. This is the original filter. There may be some fluid that comes out. Probably not.
I don't know why not. They ain't gonna do it to the fan, will it?
A little bit's coming out. And we're gonna have to add some because see all this is in here that's gonna come out. So what we want to do now,
Where we put that in that?
hang on just a minute, we need to carefully clean this. We don't want any dirt getting in this. It would have been a really good idea to blow this off. This is pretty, but I think we're okay. There we go.
Yeah, that hose was setting it off a millimeter.
And we do want to just try and get some of that oil cleaned up if possible. But that's all there is to the fluid filter. Now, except we did lose some fluid. So we need to top up our transmission fluid filter and make sure that this isn't leaking. That's good and tight. Now, in theory, we lost some. So we're going to check this again. It's pretty close to full. We don't need to put that much in, but we will add a little. We got that clean. Okay, so we'll just put in a little bit. And let that settle, and we'll take another reading in a little bit. Okay. All right, so Malik, what we just did is we changed the hydraulic transmission fluid filter here for the hydraulic transmission system. This should be done at 50 hours, and we had the original one on, so we're past that, but we were fine to get it done. We added more fluid just to make sure, and so this is for the transmission system, which is a hydrostatic transmission system. And while we were here, we also made an adjustment on your brake system that was not serving you. So we adjusted these bolts down below here for adjusting the tension on the brake, and hopefully that solves that problem. So all we need to do now is start the engine and check and see that this does not leak.
Starting engine.
Any leaks, so go ahead and shut it off. All right, so this just goes back on. Okay, what we're doing today now is to just adjust the tension of the fan belt, and it's easier if you get this guard out of the way. So I've already removed the bolt, and our fan belt is right here. This black belt that goes from the crankshaft up to the fan and the water pump, and then over to the alternator. And this is called the angle adjustment bolt up here, and this down here is the mounting bolt. And so to adjust this, we loosen the angle adjustment bolt, we loosen the mounting bolt, and then we just pull the alternator towards me to put more tension on the belt, and then tighten that, and we're done. So we just have to make sure we've got the right size tools. I'm guessing that's not a 13 but a 12 millimeter on that. So make sure I'm loosening. You can get that out of the way, thanks. The air intake. And this has not been done yet, so everything's a little tight. And you don't remove these, you just loosen them up so that things can move. And then we do the mounting bolt. So I just loosen this, and now the alternator's free. And I'm going to tighten the top. I'm just going to pull this forward. The alternator, I'm literally pulling it to increase tension on the belt, and then as I do that, I just tighten this up.
So how often should I do this?
Once a year, generally, it's fine. So you just get that one really good and tight. So this belt should only push down no more than ½ an inch. So we just loosen the top, loosen the bottom, pull it forward, tighten the top, make sure it's good and snug, and then re-tighten the bottom, and that's really all there is to it. So this should be a weekly thing that you check. Check your tire pressure, yep. I wrote that PSI for the rear is 22. And you are way down.
Wow.
You're at about 14 or 15 PSI. Wow. And what that means is when you're mowing, your deck isn't as high as it should be. So you hit something that you normally would miss, right, you're gonna hit it. So we have to So Malik, what we've just done off camera is we put grease on 4 grease fittings on the mower deck and on the spline that's going to go into here. So we greased everything on the mower deck. We've cleaned off the bottom of the deck. We checked the blades. Everything's good. The belt's good. Now we have to change the oil on the mower deck. That's what we're doing next. And to do that, we have to, this is both the fill plug and the drain plug right here. This is a 22 millimeter. It's a 22 millimeter, and we just spin that off. Now that it's free, go ahead and spin that loose, Malik. Again, there's a gasket on there. We don't want to lose that.
Take it out?
Yep, all the way out. No oil should come out. All right, and we'll put that out of the way. And what we're gonna do, this is highly scientific here. We're gonna have a cup ready to get the oil. I'm gonna lift that end 90 degrees up, and we're gonna let all the oil drain out of it. So this also has to be out of the way as we do this. So if you're ready, Malik, on catching the oil,
yep.
I will very easily, gently lift this up.
Come on. Come on. Come on. It's coming out.
And you can see how dirty that is. And we're gonna get it all the way up.
All the way up.
There's not that much oil in this, actually.
Yes. It's coming out.
Okay, now I'm gonna, if you've got the cup, I'm gonna go move your body that way. Yep, good. Come just a little. So Malik has correctly identified what's called the check plug. And what we're gonna do is just open this up. This is a 12 millimeter. I think that's free if you wanna back it out, Malik. And what happens is, as we pour into here using a funnel, when oil starts coming out there, we know we're full. Very scientific.
It has a washer on here too.
Yep, and that's a 12. This is a 22 millimeter. All right. And so what's going to happen, this is hydraulic transmission fluid. This is what's recommended for the gear oil in the gearbox of the mower. It's very clear, and it's a very light oil. And what's going to happen is, as we pour into there, when we start seeing oil coming out of the side where the check plug is facing the leak, we know we're full.
Should I put that pin back in there or just no?
You know, a little's going to seep out, but we're okay. So which is the funnel we're using? This one here?
Yeah.
So we hold that at an angle, and we just pour this in until we see some start to come out. And I can take this from here.
That was a great experience.
I mean, you're lucky to have concrete, because this...
Yeah.
So we gotta pivot it and drag it.
What's that take?
Yep. It's gonna come a little... Hang on a minute. Okay. It's gotta come a little further.
Now, we've come to the end of our presentation about the Kubota 2120, GR 2120, riding lawn tractor. And Shane LaBrake, a good friend of mine, has shown me how to change the oil, take the deck off, to change the transmission fluid, change the filters, the oil filters, the breathing, the cooling system, how to keep it cool, how to keep it from getting overheating, because there are other ways besides just not having fluid in it. But anyway, he's showing me a lot now how to lubricate, the lubrication points, and I think that's just about covers it. Then Shane want to add some, and he give me a nice little cool steering knob that goes with it. So no, but I want to thank Shane for this. And thank Bella for filming this, making this nice video. I hope y'all learned something from this, because I have. Now I don't feel so bad about riding this tractor and not knowing how to maintenance it, because it's very important to keep your machinery working. It's like this is your workhorse. Remember back in the day when they had the mules and and the horses and the oxen and stuff, Jay brought that out. We had to feed them and take care of them. When you got a machine, you spend money for it, and you expect the machine to do some production for you, but you got to take care of the machine because you're going to get out of it what you put in.
Well, that's right, Malik. And you know, this is brand new. This was probably $8,000 or $9,000, and this is not just like a Home Depot or Lowe's style riding lawnmower. This is a real tractor. This has a 3-cylinder diesel engine in it. It's a 21 horsepower, I believe, diesel engine, and with a hydrostatic transmission. This thing should last easily 25 to 30 years, easily, if it's well maintained. It's rugged, it's durable, it's 4-wheel drive, you've got weight on it up front to help you with your slopes, and it's a great little machine that should serve you for a long, long time. And what we've gone through in the last 6 or 7 hours is the service that should be done daily, like the daily maintenance checks at the end of the day and the beginning of the day, what should be done weekly, checking the tire air pressure, cleaning off the deck, greasing things, and then what should be done every year. I think we had a good day. We learned a lot, did a lot, and had a lot of fun. It's good to see you again. Thank you. It's good to be here.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, you betcha. It goes both ways.